Hey guys, welcome back to another video and thanks so much for tuning in. Today I'm going to tell you how you can figure out exactly how much money you're going to need before you can stop working so that you can see the exact number you'll need to aim for, and then you can figure out how much time it's going to take you to get there. Now, if that sounds good to you, make sure you stick around to the end so that you can get the most out of this video. And with that said, let's get started. First off, if you're new to the channel and you're interested in learning about personal finance, investing, and everything in between, make sure you subscribe down below and turn on those notifications so that you don't miss out on new videos every single week that are going to help you with just that. So, how can you find out how much money you're going to need before you can quit your job and never have to work another day again? Well, step one is to figure out how you can set up or structure your finances when you're no longer working. And there are generally two ways of looking at this. The first is to save a lump sum of money that you can then use to pay for all of your living costs and other expenses. And the value of those savings will be gradually reduced over time as you take more and more money out of the capital to fund your lifestyle. The risk here, of course, is that you could potentially outlive your savings. For example, if you saved up enough money to last you to 85 years old, but you end up beating the odds and living to 100. The average life expectancy in the UK is 83.3 years for females and 80.2 years for males. However, as a general rule of thumb, those who follow this lump sum approach tend to use the 4% rule, which doesn't work based on life expectancy, but instead assumes that your savings are going to need to last you for 25 years. The belief here is that you can safely withdraw 4% of your original capital every 25 years and still have a reasonable chance that you won't outlive your money. Now, the second way to structure your finances is to save up a nest egg which, when invested, is large enough to generate an annual return for you that will cover all of your expenses without you needing to dip into the capital value of your investments. The biggest benefit of this approach is that you never eat into your capital. So once you've saved up the amount of money that you need, you shouldn't then have to worry about outliving your savings because you're going to be generating income from your investments every single month, whilst your original lump sum remains untouched. Over time, the stock market has historically generated annual average returns of around about 10%, which then drops down to 7% when adjusted for inflation. So we can therefore assume that the average rate of return you might be able to expect on your lump sum investment is going to be around the 7% mark. Okay, so now we know the options. Step two is going to be to figure out what your annual expenses are, so that you can then figure out how much income you're going to need to generate each year to be able to fund those expenses. The best place to start with this is to take a look at your current monthly expenses, which should give you a good idea of how much money you're currently spending. However, do remember that when you're no longer working, there will likely be some changes that you should take into consideration. For example, some deductions that you might be able to make to your current expenses are for things like a mortgage that you plan to have paid off by the time you stop working, or for pension or other investment contributions that you're no longer going to be making because you'll now be withdrawing money from those investments rather than depositing it. Also, if your daily commute to work costs you a lot of money in petrol, parking, or train tickets, you can finally say goodbye to those costs too. In addition to cutting out some of your current expenses, it is also worth factoring in any additional costs that you don't pay for now, but that you're likely to need when you stop working. An example of this could be private medical insurance if you currently receive that as an employment benefit, because you're going to need to pay those insurance premiums in future if you want to keep up the cover. It's also important to consider that you're going to have a lot more free time on your hands when you aren't working. And you'll want to make the most of that time, which is probably going to result in you spending more than you currently do on things like travel, eating out, and anything else that you choose to fill your time with. So do be honest with yourself when you're thinking about these costs so that you can make sure you have an accurate idea of what your expenses are going to look like. Whether it's $20,000 a year or $200,000 a year, it's really important to be accurate. So now that we understand the options and we know how much income you're going to need each year in order to fund your lifestyle, it makes sense to next figure out how much money the two options back from step 1 are going to require you to save so that you can then choose which one you want to aim for. And that's what we're going to look at now in step 3. So as you'll remember, the idea behind the first option from step 1 was to save up a lump sum of money that would be enough to pay for all of your expenses each year for the rest of your life. This one is fairly simple to calculate, but there's one variable that you can never ever be sure of, and that is, of course, how long you're going to live for. As I mentioned earlier, the average life expectancy in the UK is 83.3 years for females and 80.2 years for males. But obviously those figures are averages and the actual number is going to be different for everyone. So you'll need to decide what number you're going to aim for. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to be cautiously positive and aim a little bit higher than the average. So I'll be basing this on a life expectancy of 90 years old. I'll bring up a table on the screen here to show you what it looks like when you figure out how much money you would need in order to quit your job using this approach. As you can see, all you need to do is work backwards from age 90 and then add in the total annual expenses figure that you decided on in step 2 for each year. And do that all the way back to whatever age you are now so that you can see how much money it will take to be able to stop working at every age. So for example, at age 40, with annual expenses of £40,000, you would need to have savings of £2,040,000 in order to be able to take an income of £40,000 per year until you reach 90 years old. Clearly, that's a lot of money to save up, but then again, 40 is a lot earlier than most people retire. So if you were aiming for a more traditional retirement age of around 65, then as you can see, you would need to save up almost half of that amount. So now let's take a look at how much money it would take to be able to stop working using the second approach that we spoke about in step 1, which was to save a lump sum of money that would be big enough to generate an annual return for you that will cover all of your expenses without you needing to dip into the lump sum itself. As you can see, I've used the exact same annual expenses figure of £40,000 here, and I've also assumed an average annual return of 7%. Which, as I mentioned earlier, is a reasonable assumption based on the fact that this is what the stock market has historically returned on average when returns are adjusted for inflation. I have tried to lay this one out as simply as possible, so I do apologise if that hasn't worked, but hopefully you can get the idea and you can see how this calculation works. So as you can see under step 1, the first thing we need to do is to divide 100, which represents 100%, by 7, which represents the 7% return. And that leaves us with 14.29, which, by the way, has been rounded up in the spreadsheet to make it easier to follow. Step 2 then tells us that we now need to multiply 40,000, which is our annual expenses figure again, by that 14.29 in order to arrive at the total lump sum amount that we're going to need to save up. And as you can see, that figure comes out as £571,428.57. This shows us that £40,000 is 7% of £571,428.57. So if we need to generate £40,000 per year to cover our expenses at a 7% rate of return, £571,428.57 is the precise amount of money that we're going to need to save up in order to be able to do that. Now, comparing the two examples side by side, you can see that you would need to save up £600,000 using the lump sum approach to be able to stop working at age 76, which is quite late to be retiring. Whereas with the second approach of investing at 7% annual return, saving up slightly less than that 600,000, or £571,428.57 to be precise, means that you could stop working regardless of your age, whether that is 76 or 22. So now that we've done the hard work and figured out how much money each of these options is going to require you to save up before you can stop working, it's now up to you to decide which one you want to go with, so go ahead and let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. Also, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It only takes a couple of seconds to do, but it really does help me out and it helps the channel to grow and reach more people too. I post a brand new video here on the channel every single week, So if you want to be among the first to be notified when a new video drops, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also turn on those notifications by clicking the bell icon down below, and you'll then be notified as and when new videos are released. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you right back here next time.